Ready, Carrie? Everybody ready?
Actually, just a second. I'm not logged in.
Hey, Chris. So far, so good. How about you? How you doing? You awake? We'll now call Planning Commission meeting of April 12th, 2022 to order. Roll call, please.
Anna here. Willow here. Kaczynski here.
Laura here. David Chair. Ruzikowski here. Holdani here.
Chandler here. Chandler here.
Okay, and Commissioner Seifert is excused tonight. Before we go, we do want to make an announcement. There is a hold of an agenda item. Actually, it's not an agenda item, but I'll ask our planner to explain.
So for the residents who may have received notice for the proposed Edgemont Estates subdivision on Nicholson Road, that was inadvertently sent out as a notice for tonight's meeting. It is not scheduled for tonight. That has not actually been scheduled for a Plan Commission agenda at this time. There are revisions that are anticipated, but you will receive notice whenever the Plan Commission agenda does include that item. So we apologize for the confusion. If you are here for that item, it is not being reviewed at this time.
Thank you, Carrie. And again, our apologies, but you are welcome to sit through the Planning Commission meeting if you like.
The meeting is being recorded via.
Oh, meeting is being recorded via Zoom. Okay. Do we have to make a formal announcement for that? No. Okay. Goes through the roll call. That will get us to approval of minutes of March 8th and March 22nd, as you recall. I don't think we had the quorum to do the minutes. So we will take those separately. If everybody could take a look at March 8th first, please. And when you're satisfied, there's no further discussion, errors, or omissions. Motion, please.
Donnie moves to approve the minutes for the Planning Commission meeting Tuesday, March 8th, 2020.
For the record, Commissioner Aldani made the motion to approve the minutes of March 8th, 2022.
Oracle, second. Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Hanna, please.
Anna, aye. Willow, aye. Kaczynski, aye.
Lorick, aye. Bukevich, aye. Ruzikowski, aye.
Holdani, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Okay. Next, we will do March 22nd, please.
Holdani moves to approve the minutes of the Oak Creek Planning Commission meeting Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022.
Ruzikowski will second. Roll call, beginning with Dawn.
Willow abstains. Kaczynski, aye.
Lorick abstains. Bukevich, aye. Ruzikowski, aye.
Holdani, aye.
Chandler abstains.
Hannah abstains.
Looks like we might have to take those in
We will
another
have
date.
to redo that. We don't have a quorum on that one, so. Oh, it's been a weird spring. I'll leave it at that. That will get us to item 4, and that is significant common council actions, of which there were none. Item 5 is Board of Housing and Zoning Appeal actions. As of today, there have been none. And our quarterly Parks Recreation Commission actions, our next report will be June the 28th, 2022. So that will get us into new business and item A, and that's consideration of conditions and restrictions for a request for Central States Tower V LLC and Celco Partnership doing business as Verizon for a conditional use permit for 145-foot tall monopole with a 5-foot lightning rod for a total height of 150 feet and apparatus in a gated and fenced compound on the property at 2509 West Drexel Avenue. Carrie, you want to take us through that?
Sure, thank you. As you'll recall, at the March 8th meeting, the Plan Commission actually reviewed this proposal and recommended approval by the Common Council. It was requested by the applicant to hold the conditions and restrictions review as there was not an available representative for the March 22nd meeting, hence why there was such a gap between the review of the actual plan and then the review of the conditions and restrictions. So as the mayor stated, this is for a telecom facility that includes a monopole with a lightning rod and a leased area. If you turn to the conditions and restrictions, and I apologize if there were some confusion with regard to the packets, there were some items that were missing. So if you do not have anything, please let me know. The conditions and restrictions are specific to the property. However, there are some things that are specific to the requested use as well. So the property description is in item 1, as always. This is for a wireless telecom site with all appurtenances. If you turn to section 3A, uses allowed on this property shall be limited to those allowed by the B4 Highway Business Zoning District. These conditions and restrictions and all applicable sections of the municipal code as amended. B, there shall be no outdoor storage of vehicles, equipment, merchandise, parts, supplies, or any other materials on the property unrelated to and outside of the wireless telecom site. C, no signs other than those required by law are allowed for this use. Under 4, parking and access shall be via the existing curb cut on Drexel Avenue. No new curb cuts or access points are allowed, and the site shall comply with all requirements per the Wisconsin Department of Transportation's 27th Street Access Management Plan as amended, and the rest is pretty much what we've seen in all the other conditions and restrictions. Setbacks are stated in item 6. Principal structure, accessory structure, and equipment areas shall all be 25 feet from the front and street, 25 feet from the rear, which is the south, and 15 feet from the side. This site does meet or exceed those requirements. Time of compliance, they have 12 months to start. Otherwise, they can come back and ask for an extension. The rest of this is other regulations to be complied with, violations, penalties, revocation, acknowledgement of receipt. So those are the conditions and restrictions. There is a suggested motion for approval on the screen. If there are any questions, feel free to ask them. I believe we do have a representative with us today. I'm not sure if they're joining us via Zoom or if they're in the audience.
Okay. If the representative would like a few minutes before we go to commission, feel free, and we will need your name and address for the record, please.
Certainly. Good evening. My name is Michael Long.
Do you want to pull the mic down?
Yeah. Good evening. My name is Michael Long. My address is 511 North Broadway, Milwaukee. I'm the lawyer for the applicants, and I've had a chance to look at the report and the proposed conditions. Namely, my focus was looking at sections 3 and 4 of the report. And in section 4, we have no problem with the restrictions on the curb cut. And then in addition to that, the compliance with WSDOT's 27th Street, I guess I'll call it a bypass, or I'm not sure the official term in the report, but we don't have a problem with that. One of the things we wanted to clarify, and are some concerns that we have in sections 3A and 3B. And the concerns just, they're not really concerns. They're more just points of clarification. And I've communicated with staff on this. But in section 3A, it says that the uses allowed on the property shall be limited to those in the B4 highway business. That, is from our point of view, as that relates to the tower, that's fine. We're a tenant on this property, and we just want to make sure that we're not in a situation where this tower is going to bring, basically make the overall property and the main use of the property for vehicle storage non-compliant. And I've been in communications with staff, and I think we're okay there, Carrie, from the point of view of the fact that it's the tower itself, the conditional use for the tower on the property will not make the other uses on the property non-compliant because they already are. Is that it?
Yeah, the tower has nothing to do with the existing condition of the property. The conditional use is specific, it's issued to the property, even though the use being requested is something that requires this particular document and this particular review. So the cell tower is not making the property any more non-conforming or not making it non-conforming at all.
Okay. And then sort of similarly in section 3B, it says there shall be no outdoor storage of vehicles, equipment. Well, the property is being used right now by the property owner as outdoor vehicle storage. And once again, we just want to make sure that there are, that this in no way is going to prevent the continued use by the property owner as a vehicle storage yard. And as I understand it, that's not the case.
The conditional use permit does not relieve the landowner from complying with all requirements of code, whether that's what the property is currently being used for or whether there are any existing violations on the property. The conditional use being requested is specific to the telecom site. What this is saying is, outside of the telecom site, we're not approving any other outdoor storage.
Oh, okay. All right. I appreciate that, because I just wanted to make sure that was the case. So
yeah, if there are
Okay.
any outstanding violations on the property, that's separate and apart from this particular process. However, this is only stating what's in code right now. So now outdoor storage is actually allowed by the district. If there are certain approvals that are on file that would allow the property owner to continue to use it as outdoor storage, we'll take a look at that. If there's a violation that's separate and apart from the wireless telecom facility.
Okay, gotcha. And those are really our concerns, and it sounds like in my previous discussions and just now with staff, it seems like those seem to be clarified.
So these conditions and restrictions are segregated from the main property.
We're not making any claims as to whether there are or aren't violations on the property. All this is saying, we've said this in other conditional uses before as well. The B4 district doesn't allow these particular uses, so we're just clarifying that anything outside the compound is not something that we're approving in this conditional use.
Gotcha.
Okay. So in other words, there's no, this is not like a method by which the entire property could be brought into compliance if it was out of compliance.
They would have to comply with
Yeah.
code no matter what.
Okay, sure. Okay. Right. Otherwise, we have no other concerns with the conditions, restrictions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We've got quite a few residents. Are there any residents that came in to speak on this? I'll allow you up if so. No? Okay, we'll go to the commission. We'll start with Commissioner Hannah.
Yes, I actually kind of have a question for you, Carrie. When it says there is a restriction on outdoor storage, and you say it's kind of grandfathered into whatever is existing today, what does it exactly mean? Is it how many stalls? Because I know there is a couple of businesses in this
They're
area.
not making any we're not making any claims as to whether there are or are not violations on the property right now. We're not making any claims as to grandfather status or no. What we are saying is, in this conditional use permit, we are only approving the telecom tower and the compound. Anything else on the property still has to comply with the code, and the code says no outdoor storage. If there is an existing violation on the property, that still is something that we can pursue outside of the conditional use permit, but we don't know whether or not there's a violation on the property at this time.
Sure, I understand. So is there like number of stalls where they can use, or?
Don't know. It's one of those historic properties where we actually have to go into the files to see whether or not there are approvals, but that's separate and apart from what's being requested.
Okay. Okay.
On, nothing, Ashley?
One comment from engineering, just a reminder to apply for green infrastructure since the impervious surface is greater than 5,000 square feet. Thank you.
Okay,
No questions, thank you.
Chris? No questions from me either. Don?
No questions.
Chauncey?
I do have a question for the applicant. In our prior meeting, there were some items that were identified would be located on the compound. Could you go over that again? Because I just want to verify the details of those items in regards to storage.
Yes, so, if I understand you correctly, I think you're referring to, the discussion we had where we talked about the, sort of the drop point for the electric service, the drop point for the fiber service, and then I believe in addition to that, there was a bollard there, and sort of in the corner of where, we were looking to, place those various amenities. And, my understanding is that, you know, we're willing to protect those things and they are within, they have been placed, in looking at the site plan, if I'm not mistaken, they have been placed outside the fenced area but inside the easement area so that the utility company and the phone company can get to them. And the concerns were that if they go inside the fenced in area, the power company and the phone company won't be able to get to them. And so our preference would be to keep them outside the area with the bollard there to protect them, with the understanding that those two access points remain in they're going to be in the access easement, or the utilities easement, I should say.
Okay,
And I know that, if I'm not mistaken, staff may have been looking into the feasibility of those placements too.
Staff have no
Yeah.
objections to the placement.
Oh, okay.
okay. So the placement's okay, and even though it's outside the area, that's not considered storage? Is that correct, Carrie?
No, they're utilities, basically. It's a bollard to
So
protect,
different.
it's a bollard to protect like,
Okay.
like a transformer almost.
Okay,
So, yeah, we're fine with that. We were hoping that if anything could be contained in the fenced area, they would be. But just these items, we're not in, we don't have any problem with that.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
As far as I go, I have no questions, but, Assistant Chief Havey, is there any concerns from fire at all? Gee, I don't mean to make you walk all the way up, but if you got something, please.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, so I did walk up because he had a request, but no, we have no concerns with this.
Okay, just wanted to make sure fire's good with it, so. Okay, seeing no further discussion, motion on 7A, please.
And Hannah moved that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopts the conditions and restriction as part of the conditional use permit for a wireless telecommunications pole and associated facility on the property at 2509 West Drexel Avenue after a public hearing.
Guzekowski, second.
Roll call, beginning with Ashley.
Jinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Bekavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Chandler, I.
Hannah, aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in, sir. Item 7B, review of certified survey map submitted by Dave Decker, Decker Properties, combining and reconfiguring the properties at 8100, 8146 South 27th Street, 8100 South Orchard Way. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This may look familiar to plan commissioners. This is a certified survey map that would be for the Oaks at 8100. The reason this is back before you is because unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, the original CSM that was approved last year in March was not recorded prior to the statutory one-year deadline. That's the only reason we're back here. It's still to combine and reconfigure those parcels in anticipation of the PUD, which was approved. It does have the dedication of the revised public right-of-way, and there were revisions that were incorporated from staff comments. So we do not have any questions or concerns with what's being proposed. On the screen right now is just a refresher of the CSM showing the public right-of-way that was reconfigured with WISDOT input. Lot 1 is going to contain the majority of the development. Lot 2 would contain, I think it's 3 or 4 of the buildings that are proposed as part of the PUD. This is just another shot of the public right-of-way. Again, the public right-of-way stops at the north property line, and then the private street connection to 27th Street goes west. And on the screen right now is a suggested motion for approval. This is the same suggested motion as was approved in March. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. I think she spelled it out pretty clearly, but we'll go to commission. Any questions? Chelsea?
No questions. Thank you.
John?
No questions.
Chris? No. Greg?
One quick question. In the report, it noted that the wetland buffers were revised per the previous conditions of approval. Did that change on this map, and does that any way affect the approved plans that we already have?
The reason it was noted is because it's included in the CSM.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Ashley?
No questions.
Ellen?
Nothing for me.
Christine?
Nothing here.
Nothing from me either, so we can motion on 7B, please.
Guzekowski will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by David Decker, Decker Properties, and for the properties at 8100 and 8146 South 27th Street and 8100 South Orchard Way be approved with the following condition: that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code and the Wisconsin state statutes are made prior to recording.
Ladani, seconds.
Roll call, beginning with beginning with Greg.
Lorick, aye.
Bekavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Chandler, I.
Hannah, aye.
Jinsky, aye.
Okay. Moving right along, 7C, conditional use permit, review a request submitted by Kevin Slinker, Superior Air Ground Ambulance Service for an amendment to the existing conditional use permit for a private emergency service facility within the multi-tenant industrial building on the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the 6th amendment to the existing conditional use permit for this property, if this is recommended for approval. There is still one pending before the Common Council, and that'll be at that board on the 19th of April, I believe. This is for a private emergency service facility. Plan commissioners may recall that we discussed this as being part of the zoning code update. It was incorporated as part of the approved document. So this is in building B on the property, and the associated suites are kind of in the hatched area shown on the screen. So as we previously mentioned, the private emergency service facility is kind of a contract-based service where they provide basic, advanced, and critical care transport to specific areas for which they do have contracts, whether that be through hospitals or a private request or something like that. So this isn't just your general going to be calling, for an ambulance as part of a 911 situation. Although, as we heard from Assistant Chief Havey in the previous consideration, that in the future, should there be kind of like a mass event that needs to have kind of like all hands on deck, that might be a situation where we see these partnerships that come into line. But for the most part, this is on a contract basis. So what the proposal is kind of similar to how the fire department is set up, in the fact that they have kind of like I don't want to say living quarters, but rooms for people who are on call to kind of provide some rest and relaxation. Offices, there's conference rooms for training, private rooms, bath facilities, a kitchen, lounge, and the garage is for the parking of the ambulances themselves. This is a site that would be, or is anticipated to be at some point, 24/7 staffed. And while they don't have necessarily specific parking stalls that were included in their narrative as being part of the lease, what we did was consider that there would be one stall for every 250 square feet required. We only counted the portion of the lease area that was not going to be dedicated to storing the ambulances. We figured that was only fair. So that would require at least, I think it's 20 parking stalls. So that was kind of the one question that we still had, is how many are actually dedicated to the lease? And we don't know exactly how many employees are there, but since it's going to be on a rotational basis, we do have a situation where there is shared parking. So it will be up to the landlord or the management company in order to make sure that all of their lessees, all of their tenants, have sufficient parking for all times of the day, for all hours of operation, for all buildings. So if we turn to the conditions and restrictions, again, this is another amendment for private emergency services. If you turn to page 2 under section 3, B4 is specific to Superior Ambulance Service. For the private emergency service facility, they're operating 24/7. The only other additional condition that we are suggesting as part of these amended CNRs is E. Sirens utilized on vehicles for the private emergency services facility shall be engaged only when medically necessary. This is attempting to prevent sirens from going all the time, since this is not going to be one of those situations where it is like the fire department, it is like it is for public EMS. So that's trying to get at those concerns that were raised by the residents that are across the street at the previous review. With that in mind, there is a suggested motion for approval on the screen for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Is the applicant with us? Would he like to make a statement prior to us going to commission?
Good evening. Martha Augustine. My address is 1015 Madison Avenue in Wakanda. Thank you for your time and consideration. We really don't have any comments at this time. I'm just looking to provide service, medical service in the area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any residents that would like to comment? Please come up one at a time and name and address, please.
Hello, I'm Pete Schumacher, 305 East Rawson, Hill Creek, right across the street. I think the business sounds fine. I'm not overly concerned with them moving into this area. The one concern I have, basically is just, we don't want sirens going off in the middle of the night. And it sounds like their basic process won't call for that. Although the one concern is there's a reference to testing prior to every shift or at every shift change. If that requires testing the sirens, which I would expect it would, doing that within the building doesn't bother me that much because it would contain the noise. If they were doing outside the building, that would be a concern of mine, given the fact that shift change could be at 7 in the morning or 11 at night. So I guess I would ask that you consider putting something in a conditional permit that restricts them from testing the sirens outside of the building. And even if their process is that they wouldn't do that, processes change, ownership of businesses change. We like to have that in there, so we don't have to worry about that.
Okay. we can, address that, sir. The other resident, please.
Okay. Mike Bielski, 251 East Rawson Avenue. Pete went over, he's my neighbor, so he went over some of the concerns with the noise. One of the concerns I have with rezoning these buildings is that this wasn't set up for, I should say a garage storage area for vehicles. Do we know how many ambulances are gonna be parked in that building?
And that we have the applicant here, so we will address that. We'll get all your questions in time here. We'll get them back.
Okay, my concern is, and it doesn't really affect me, but you do realize that there's a child care center and an indoor playground in that facility. These ambulances have fuel in them, they have lithium batteries, they have oxygen, and if anything would ever happen, as a fire would start within these buildings with these vehicles in there, depending how many are in there, I don't see you rezoning this operation, and in most cases, this type of operation has a standalone building. They're not incorporated with there's two other office buildings in there right now that have people in there. And plus, we're talking about testing the sirens and the horns and all this stuff. Well, what about the people that are in there right now that definitely are going to hear this too? So my opinion is this is, again, a bad scenario to put this type of operation in this building for those reasons I just stated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there another resident? No? Looks like, Assistant Chief Havey's gonna come up and provide some commentary here. Maybe educate us. Or answer.
Again, good evening, Mayor and Commissioner, Mike Havey, Oak Creek Fire. In regards to the testing of sirens, I'll just speak for the fire department. We don't test our sirens inside the building because of the hearing of our employees. It impacts everybody. So that's something we have our mechanical programs that make sure all of our equipment works, but testing sirens is not a test that we do daily because we know that it operates when we respond to a call. And also our mechanics at DPW make sure that our equipment works. So if there are issues, it gets settled there. So that's just on the fire department side of things. We would not recommend the testing of sirens inside a building because of the decibels would affect a lot of people. The other part is it's a fully sprinkled building, that the system must be maintained and it must have annual testing and documentation that it can provide the automatic sprinkler systems for the hazards inside the building.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Thanks. Could I ask the applicant, could Superior come up and, seeing as we just had two, first, once again, name and address, please.
Sure. Martha Augustine, 1015 Madison Avenue, Wakanda, Illinois.
How many ambulances will, be serviced out of here?
It'll be less than a dozen, realistically more like 4 to 6. Yeah.
Okay, so they rotate, so it's possible they could be dispatched out of here and go somewhere else?
Absolutely. We utilize system status management. So if we have high call volumes in another area, they could be going to another area.
So I actually have a question about that because it was our understanding that the ambulances were going to be contained fully in the building. Where are the others going to be parked?
We won't be parking any outside. So if they don't fit in the building, we won't be adding any more ambulances.
So the floor plan that we were given shows 2 bays.
Yes.
You can fit 6 ambulances in the 2 bays?
Oh, we have it built for 4. My apologies.
Okay.
So 4 probably
It'll be 4.
max at any given time?
Yes.
Okay, and then, siren testing, can you describe how often you do it and how long you do it?
Sure. We do, as part of our checkout, we do test our sirens daily in the morning hours. It takes about 1 second. We are happy to suspend that practice if that's what you'd like us to do.
We can take that up as a council. Obviously, It was stated, Pete put it out there. I mean, we want to make sure the equipment works when it's needed to work, but by the same token, you know, we don't want to do it at 7:30 in the morning. And
Understood.
if we could pick a reasonable time, and if you're only testing them for a second. Again, once again, our chief warned about doing it inside and high decibel levels, so, okay. We can figure that out in conditions and restrictions, whether to suspend the testing or not.
Okay.
I would imagine you guys just kind of give them a zip on
It's
the
a
road
quick-
somewhere.
Yep, quick zip and right off. Just-
Okay,
Mhm.
that may be the easier alternative and really just keep the neighbors happy, so. Okay, if there's no further comment from the public or the applicants, we'll take it to commission. Chauncey, you want to start us out?
Sure. I just want to go back to the testing. So can you provide a little more information on when you say testing at 7 in the morning?
That's
Is that
general.
testing each vehicle and then only once a day? Because we were thinking it's per shift.
Correct. It would be each vehicle at the start of shift, and shift changes generally in the morning.
Are they 24-hour shifts?
We will have a combination of 24 and 12-hour shifts. Yes.
Okay, so there's a possibility to do this twice a day then for the 4 vehicles?
No, we would only do it in the morning hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and, in regards to the parking, so I'm understanding the maximum of 4 vehicles, which will all be parked on the inside, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, thank you.
On?
Nothing at this time.
Chris?
I had nothing, thank you.
Greg?
My only question is with regard to the sirens. I know that seemed to be an issue with some of the residents. And in the conditions, it says only when medically necessary. I don't know if this is a thing anymore. It was years ago, I worked for a competing private ambulance company. And we hadn't established quiet hours because we did neighbor a residential area. We weren't allowed to engage the sirens till we made it to the main street. So it was lights only. I don't know if that's an accepted practice anymore. Is that something that we could possibly say like 11 PM, 10 PM until 5 AM? No sirens between these, there's only the few houses across the street until you make it to Howell or until you're past the houses on the other side? Or is that just dangerous to do, I guess?
No, absolutely. We're more than happy to do that. We can actually suspend the use of the siren until we get out to the main street at Howell. So we can activate our lights and sirens when we get to that intersection. Whether or not we're using our lights and sirens, we're stopping at the intersection anyway. So that would be a safe practice for us.
Is it possible to go east out of that parking lot? Can somebody kind of refresh? No, you have to go west of Howell.
Don't believe that there's a full cut there.
There is not.
I think it's always just a right out.
Okay, so you have to go all the way to Howell?
There's only one exit.
Okay, so you have to go to Howell.
Yes.
Okay, so Howell would be the borderline for siren engagement. Okay, where were we? Greg, you had the floor. Sorry about that. I'm butting in.
That's all. Thanks.
Ashley?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Ron?
Nothing for me.
Christine?
Nothing here. I was just looking at the building. There's no other businesses attached to that building, right? From what I see here.
There are tenants in the building. We just don't have a full site plan showing all build-out tenants.
So what are the other tenants?
We have tenants that are in both buildings. There are tenants that didn't require conditional use permits, so I'm not entirely certain who all the tenants are. I can only tell you who's part of the conditional uses that are on the property. So you have AST Learn, you have the Early Autism Project. Both of those have indoor and outdoor conditional use permits. Then there's a gym that was recently recommended for approval. I am also aware that there's a lab testing facility that's going to go into the northern portion of this building, but I couldn't tell you who the tenants are who are existing that didn't require conditional use permits.
Have those been consulted or shared with this facility, and did they have any concerns or?
I don't know. That would be up to the landlord to provide that information to their tenants.
like a notice went out to them telling them?
Notice goes out to the property owner, so it'd be incumbent upon the property owner to inform their tenants.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Boy, most of my questions have been answered. I guess the only questions are, in the conditions and restrictions, we would have to include the boundary for the siren engagement. Carrie, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
What we will have to do is craft some language for council consideration.
Okay, how best handle it here? Do we, within the motion, make it the staff to, define?
You don't have to include it in the motion. Staff will incorporate that as part of the council consideration.
Okay. All right, to the residents, I think you guys can be satisfied. We're gonna take care of the siren engagement. Once again, they won't go till Howell. And, as Greg said, they'll confer on the, what'd you call it? The quiet time, the quiet zone?
Yeah, I think that's what we called it. We had quiet hours.
Okay, we'll try to incorporate that as well.
Mayor, quick question. What about the testing time?
That's what we're talking about right now, is that the testing would only be outside of the quiet hours that would be established.
Outside the quiet hours and we could do it off property. I think they said they'd be amenable. You have to come to the mic, sir.
Mike Piowski, 251 East Rawson. The other thing about that, they can cross the street on Rawson Avenue and go east towards South Milwaukee. So part of that testing,
That's what I just asked.
Yeah.
I thought they said there was.
they can, there's only one entrance to that complex, but they can either go east or west. So how would be west, and if they cross the street, they can go towards South Milwaukee.
And that's what I was referring to when I said, can they go east?
If I'm looking at this correctly, and if the site plan that I'm seeing is what's actually existing out there, that's a turn lane to go into the property. They can't actually use that to turn to go east.
Yep.
Ashley, am I correct?
Wrong.
No, I don't see that. It looks like there would have been like newer curb and like concrete in the median formed with a left turn lane. So heading eastbound from Howell Avenue, it appears that you can make a left turn lane crossing the median to get into the driveway. Therefore, they would have access both eastbound and westbound.
Correct. So they can cross Rawson Avenue from that their driveway there, and they can turn and go west towards Howell, or they can cross the street and go east.
So the east boundary we have to establish then.
This is getting into a point where we, as part of the conditional use permit, we have no jurisdiction over when sirens are going to be used. We tried to accommodate it by saying only when medically necessary, but there's really no policing that we can do for making sure that they get to a certain boundary before they turn the sirens on. So we're getting into a concern of how do we enforce the code requirement?
True. So, let me ask you this, and I guess this is for Superior. If I could have Superior up here again. It's medically necessary. I know, from the time I ain't even gonna speak for the fire department when the sirens go on and when they don't. In your experience though, ma'am, when do you typically turn them on? If it's just a standard transport, you're not gonna do that. Can you go lights only? Or do you have to, as soon as you hit a DOT highway or thoroughfare, do you have to turn the sirens and lights on? I don't know what the law is.
We have to have both sirens and lights activated. However, all of our data shows that it's a very small percentage of our calls that require lights and sirens. The majority of our calls are non-emergent inter-facility transfers. Calls that do require lights and sirens usually happens when we pick up a patient from the hospital. So then we are activating the lights and sirens from that hospital to a higher level of care. So that's our most common activation of lights and sirens.
Again, would it be fair to say you know where the location is to Howell if you activated them when you hit that main thoroughfare, once you get a little ways away from the residents? Or we can't police that, as Carrie said.
No, and I would be hard pressed to find language that would be something that we could put in there to address the concerns, to address, what the needs are and what, frankly, what their requirements are that are outside of our jurisdiction. The only thing I can really put in here that I can think of would be quiet hours for the testing, and to say that sirens would still only be when medically or, required by law. We can't, like I said, saying you cannot use them until you get to Howell Avenue or until you get to however many 350 feet, just random here from the residential. I don't think we can really impose that.
Okay, looks like our assistant chief has some input for us.
Try to make this quick, Mike Havey, Assistant Chief, Oak Creek Fire. So, state provisionals through DHS, Division of Health Services, gives the permissions through an operational plan on emergency response. So the facility, or if it's through an emergent call, so the category of when to respond emergency is at the point of call. So the provider should be aware when they need to go emergent through their dispatch center. So that's where they kind of categorize that and filter that if it's emergent or non-emergent. So that is undetermined. So I think the scenario was that they could be between a hospital or going to a hospital, and they could receive a call that requires them to then respond emergent. So those cases, like in our facilities was stated, those typically are non-emergent requests because they are already in some sort of care, and they don't need the emergency response, but there is times it could happen.
Okay, so, as Carrie said, we can't rewrite the law in that regard.
Right, so the only thing that I can think that we would have any jurisdiction over would be, again, to say when they're medically or, required by DHS, and then we can have quiet hours for the testing. I believe that would be the sufficient, really the only tool that we would have in order to make that kind of a restriction.
That's our last word.
Need my name and address again?
No,
Okay.
go ahead,
Well,
Mike.
that's the point I want to make here, is that you're changing zoning, and again, you're letting an operation operate at the expense of us residents again. You just said that you can't make them not turn their sirens on, so there's no way you're going to tell them they're not going to turn them on or not. So if they want to turn them on and you're changing the zoning to have that sort of operation across the street from us, and we're going to have to deal with it because they don't care. They're not the ones that are going to get woken up in the middle of the night or whatever it may be.
If you would have paid attention where Chief Havey was saying at the point of call determines if those sirens and lights go when they leave. It's not every single call. She said it could be a lower percentage. Some days it may be higher depending on the calls. But again, nor can you restrict sirens from our fire department on the roads.
I know that. I never.
So we can't ascertain the same thing from them. So.
But you have the point is here,
The property we can, and we're making our best effort to do this.
right, but the point is here, you have a choice. You can deny this and have that kind of operation across the street from us where you're not putting us in this situation. That's the point.
Thank you. Okay, so Carrie, back to what can we do on the property within the restrictions?
What we can say is that the sirens have to be used when medically necessary or as required by state law. That testing shall not occur, outside of designated hours, and we can determine what those hours would be. If they're okay with no testing prior to, let's just pick a time, 9 a.m. and nothing after, let's pick another time, 6 p.m. And like I said, I'm just picking random times here. That would be something that we could impose as part of the conditions. As far as restricting sirens altogether, we don't have that, we're not able to do something like that. So sirens, be they from fire department, from police department, from, neighboring jurisdictions, the sirens are outside of our control for a lot of this.
Okay.
I do have a quick question. So who's actually responsible for this? Is it the landlord or is it the tenant?
It would be both.
Okay.
Okay. So the conditional use is requesting something for which the Superior Ambulance Service would have to abide by. And it's ultimately the landowner's responsibility to ensure that whatever is granted on their property is followed. So if there is a violation, there's two ways that we can go about it. We can go about it by talking to the landowner, which is the appropriate way as well. But we also have a tenant that is responsible for abiding by these conditions and restrictions. So we do have those mechanisms in place. They're all required to abide by them.
And then Mayor, I have one additional question for the applicant. So my question is, with all the concerns about the neighbors and those who are also in the building, were there any discussions with the other tenants and the landlord about all of this? Or is the landlord here, or landowner, I should say? Is the landowner here?
You'll have to come up to the podium, sir, and we'll need your name and address.
Good evening, Jason Akilski. My address is 931 Hickory Hill Parkway, Hubertus, Wisconsin. And I'm not the landowner, but I'm a representative here on behalf of St. John Properties.
Okay.
So I was just trying to better understand the potential impact this could have on not only the residents, but also the other tenants that are in this area. So were there any communications with everyone in the area to go over the details?
There was some brief conversations, and we do have Superior as a tenant in another one of our buildings, that we have multiple tenants in, and we have never had any concerns with the brief testing of, I mean, it's a quick zip just to hear that they're on. So they're not sitting there with them blaring for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So it is just a quick turn them on, turn them off. So I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Actually, I have one more
Yes,
question.
go ahead.
For Carrie, actually. So, Carrie, can't we use the noise ordinance to kind of set up this? No?
No, because this is emergency services. We don't have any jurisdiction over something like sirens.
Yes, I understand. I'm just saying, can we use the timing of the noise ordinance? It's from 8 to 10?
If you want to say that testing can only occur, yes, we can do that.
Yeah, because it makes sense. If the noise ordinance is accepting it, then it can be done within those times.
The only thing is that the noise ordinance comes into a decibel level, and we would probably, I mean, that would exceed the noise ordinance, obviously, for just a second, but if we want to say something like, because I believe that the noise ordinance is either 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night.
It's from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m.
So, well, yeah, there's two different sections too. It's a little bit confusing, but it's a matter of, do we want to allow it per the noise ordinance, or do we want to say, you really shouldn't be doing this before, let's say, 8:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know what that time is. And as far as going at night, again, is 10 o'clock appropriate? Is 8 o'clock appropriate? That's not for me to determine. That would be up to Plan Commission to make a recommendation to council.
Okay, one last question. I don't know if it's for both of you or not. I see on the suggested motion here that a public hearing is going to occur. Can you include in that meeting a communication with adjacent owners or occupant or whoever they are to kind of have this communication? Even because from sitting here, I'm like, oh my gosh, the sounds of the sirens will be really loud. Maybe exhibits, like for 1 second, what is that testing maybe? Maybe? Can this happen? Can this take place?
Well, Superior had said that, they would accommodate almost any time or suspend it. They only got to do it once every 24 hours. That was my understanding, unless I'm mistaken.
Not just for the testing. So I see here there's a public hearing going to take place, or I don't know if is the communication with other landlord that they did not take place. So that needs to happen somehow.
Well, that, as Carrie explained, that falls with the landlord.
Right. If I can make another comment too, I believe one of the landlords is special needs children's facility, and that might be effective with the sirens and things like that. So I would encourage you to be able to bring those tenants and hear this whole discussion that we're having.
Understood.
Just to put this a little bit in perspective with this, not the testing when sirens are needed, and probably anybody here can chime in. I'm assuming you use even in an emergency situation, use the sirens when needed. So if it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and you're trying to get out into the street, you want to let all the traffic know you're there. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning, when there's not a single car on the highway, on the street on Rawson, you don't necessarily start the sirens with no traffic around. Maybe you turn it, or do you automatically put the sirens on an emergency situation?
If we are required to activate our lights and sirens for an emergent response, then we have to have the lights and sirens going. But as I said, very few of our responses are emergent. We're mostly interfacility, very basic medical transports.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll just say one last thing about the sirens. I know that we can't police them. We're not going to put any conditions and restrictions. But it sounded like you were somewhat open to have at least a buffer. So, can you at least consider maybe some type of internal policy during the middle of the night hours?
Of course, we actually have internal policies in place in other locations at the requests of towns that we operate in. So, like I said, we just want to provide a medical support to your community, and whatever you would like us to do, we're willing to consider and put into our internal policy.
Yeah, that would be a continued conversation with staff to establish that.
I just want to make sure, please coordinate with neighbors. I don't know how Carrie can communicate that. I know it's on the landlord to do so.
Yeah, it's on the landlord because we don't have a full tenant list. It would have to be from the landlord to make sure that there is that communication.
So I don't know if you can send this message to him or her, or you, sir, can do that. So it
Yes,
just,
the message here right now is please make sure landlord representative, landowner representative, please ensure that you have a conversation with your tenants about this proposed use.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, commissioners, what you want to do? We got a motion. One way or another, we got to go. Yep. All right.
Guzekowski makes a motion. The Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council approves a conditional use permit amendment for a private emergency service facility within a portion of the existing multi-tenant industrial building on the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions.
Oracle second.
Roll call. Kavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Hold aye.
Chandler, aye.
Anna, I.
Bill, aye. Chipchinsky, aye.
Oric, aye.
And again, we'll work with staff. And again, if it's an internal policy or the quiet zones, we're going to try to protect the neighborhood as best as possible. So, okay. Moving right along, we have item 7D, and that is a review of a request by PPG Industries for an amendment to the existing conditional use permit to allow for a solar farm on the property at 10600 South 13th Street. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to make a point of clarification, in case anybody was confused as to why this is an amendment and not a conditional use permit, there is a conditional use that is in existence for PPG. However, there is a page of that conditions of restrictions document that is missing. And we could not confirm the exact legal description for which that conditional use permit applies. And PPG has two properties here. And in the end, it really doesn't matter which way it goes. It's all being treated as one facility for PPG. So if there was any confusion about that, I apologize. It is an amendment, but we're kind of treating the two uses separately just because of record keeping purposes and because the uses are so vastly different. So with that in mind, the proposal before the Plan Commission is for a solar farm, and it's on the northern parcel. It is for something to be a lease term with We Energies as part of the Solar Now pilot program. They are looking to lease 8 acres for 30 years. Reenergies would then have the option of, at the end of that 30-year term, either buying the property or removing all of the appurtenances should the two entities not come to an agreement on ownership at that point. The location meets all of the required setbacks, and on the screen right now is the proposed site plan. This is right immediately north of the PPG facility itself. So it's kind of, if I can orient you, on the southern end of the northern parcel. It's about 200 feet or so from the nearest portion of the PPG outdoor storage area. This will be fully fenced. The fencing will be about 8 feet in height. And the solar arrays are 17 rows of then they're separated, of ground-mounted solar collectors. They will be about 8.5 to 8 feet, 8 inches at the tallest point. They will have 3 feet of ground clearance. The only access is going to be through the gate, and this will have 24/7 monitoring, remote monitoring. They're going to extend the existing path there to provide just a little bit more of an access space. Post-construction, no lighting, no employees, but again, it will be monitored. All equipment is proposed within the fence compound. Like I said, no lighting. Native plantings are going to be used for landscaping. There are no requirements for landscaping for this particular project. The only thing that we do note here is that stormwater is and still needs to be coordinated with the engineering department to ensure that all of those requirements are met. And that really has more to do with the fact that there's a requirement for gravel underneath the solar arrays, and the amount of gravel that's going to be required kind of triggers the stormwater. On the screen right now are the sample arrays, and the farm that is shown is just, again, an example of the solar farms for other installations. There is a suggested motion for approval on the screen. However, we do have conditions and restrictions that we can go over. Again, apologies if these were missing from your packets. I was not made aware of that until right before the meeting. So since we do have previous city approvals on file for PPG, those are noted in section 2B. And if you go to section 3, the site and use restrictions, maintenance and operation requirements, uses allowed on the property shall be limited to those allowed by the zoning district, the approval ordinances and resolutions, the conditions and restrictions that are proposed, all plan commission approvals and all applicable sections of the municipal code as amended. The solar farm shall be in the location on the plans approved by the plan commission. A maximum of 8 acres of the property may be utilized for the solar farm. A certified professional engineer shall certify that the foundation and design on the solar panels are within accepted professional standards given local soil and climate conditions. This is taken directly from the new code. Power and communication lines running between banks of solar panels and to electric substations or interconnections with buildings shall be buried underground, and they propose to do that. Systems, equipment, and structures shall not exceed 30 feet in height when ground mounted. Systems, equipment, and structures shall be fully enclosed and secured by a fence or wall with a height of 8 feet. Knox boxes and keys shall be provided at locked entrances for emergency personnel access. An appropriate warning sign shall be provided at the entrance to the facility along the perimeter of the solar farm. The sign at the entrance to the facility shall include the facility's 911 address and 24-hour emergency contact number. There shall be no outdoor storage of vehicles, equipment, merchandise, parts, supplies, or any other materials on the property unrelated to and outside of the fenced solar farm compound. Access will be provided by the existing curb cut on South 13th Street. No new curb cut or access points are allowed. Parking is going to be provided by really just the parking pad that they're proposing, but that's only really for whenever there's going to be periodic maintenance on the property. If they need parking for some reason or during construction, they need to coordinate that with PPG. The setbacks for the proposal, solar panels and equipment areas within the fence must be 40 feet from front and street facing. That's a front and street facing setback. Interior side setbacks are 20 feet and rear setbacks are 20 feet. The duration of the conditional use permit in section 8 is limited to the term of lease, which is 30 years, or until such time as the solar farm is sold and or decommissioned. The owner may apply for an extension if those terms are not met. If so, prior to the expiration of the lease or prior to the expiration of the agreement under their terms. And those are the conditions. Time of compliance is still within 12 months. So in other words, they need to establish this within 12 months in order to have the effective date. That is what is contained in the conditions and restrictions, with the one caveat that the property address in the first page needs to be updated to 10600 South 13th Street. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Is the applicant with us? Do they want to state a few words before we start? I think you've been here long enough.
Thank you.
Name and address, please.
Yeah, I'm Bill French with Sunvest Solar LLC. I work out of our Illinois office, which is 330 West State Street, Suite 1, Geneva, Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah, I think staff has done a tremendous job in the presentation. I do have a presentation that was submitted, but it'd be pretty redundant at this point unless you have specific questions for me.
Okay. I guess just stand by and we'll go to the commission.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Christine, you want to start out?
Yeah, I have no questions, actually pretty effective.
Okay. On.
Nothing for me.
Ashley.
No questions.
Greg.
I guess I've never been to one of these, so this might be a dumb question, but, are they stationary? Do they move with the sun? And from the aerial, it looks like there's not residential directly next to it, but somewhere in the area, is there ever concern of this? I mean, does the sun reflect off these and cast light quite a bit?
So in this application, we're going to use a fixed tilt system, which means they face south. So the panels will be facing towards PPG. The residential is north. It's about 570 feet away. And there is a agricultural field in between that'll continue to be farmed as best as I know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chris.
I'm familiar with the area and I have no questions.
Okay. Don.
No questions.
Jocelyn.
I do have a question for our fire department in regards to this solar farm.
Getting your steps in tonight, Mike. Teach you to sit back.
Good evening, Assistant Chief Mike Avio, Creek Fire.
Just a quick question. Will the fire department need access to this area, and is it sufficient if it's needed?
So we do have other solar projects within the community. MATC recently installed one. Part of the roof of IKEA is photovoltaic. So we do have other buildings and structures that we're aware of and are familiar with the hazards of those. For access, really, there's really limits that we need to, because it's not necessarily a structure. And PPG is going to provide us with training with this type of system that they're installing. So no immediate concerns of access to the panels.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I guess my only question for the applicant, once they're up and the solar farm's operational, will it be an entirely gravel base? I mean, we talked about the stormwater, and if it's going to be allowed to grow, who's going to maintain the grass or the noxious weeds or anything of that nature?
So underneath, we'll plant a native grass. It's a low-growing prairie seed mix. It gets maintained twice a year. And other than that, yeah, we'll spot treat for any kind of noxious weeds or anything else that might come up. But to answer your question, no, there's no gravel. It's a very kind of naturalized look. Won't be too dissimilar from kind of what's out there now. Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, motion, please.
Guzekowski will make a motion that the Plan Commission recommends approves a conditional use permit for a solar farm at the property of, the address was 106.
00.
Yeah, 00 South 13th, after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions.
Oracle second.
Roll call, beginning with you, Chris.
Guzekowski, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Willow, aye. Jinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye. David, aye.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, we have review of a request for a temporary use permit for temporary construction staging area in the parking lot at 8989 South Hall Avenue. Laurie.
Job, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was the eye contact. I know I was guessing.
We're good. This is for the temporary use permit for a staging area for Target's next interior remodel project. The applicant is requesting a fenced-in staging area containing storage for three 30-yard dumpsters, 1 office trailer, 20 storage containers. The staging area and contents will be in place May 23rd through November 30th of 2022. The hours of operation for the remodel is going to be after hours, so this is going to be Sunday through Friday, 7 p.m. to 11 a.m. And just to make you aware too, that the zoning administrator, myself, have issued a temporary use permit once before in 2019 for a very similar setup. And at that time, we had no complaints about the staging area used. The next page is the site plan. As you can see, that the staging areas can be set up on the southeast corner. It's going to be a little bit further away from the building than you've seen in the past. In the past, I actually had it much closer. But this should have little to no impact on any of the traffic mobility throughout that site. So, and then at the end of your packet, I do have some suggested motions for you.
Okay. I don't know if the applicant wants to say anything or just wait on questions or if they're, over Zoom.
I'm here.
If you'd like to come up and say something, if not, you can wait on questions as well. Name and address, please.
Hi, Rob Clone, 212 Morgan Avenue South, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Project manager with Engelsma Construction.
Okay. Great. Kick it off. Christine, any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Dawn?
Nothing for me.
Ashley?
No questions, thank you.
Greg?
No questions, thanks.
Chris?
No questions, thank you.
Don?
No questions.
Chauncey?
I do have a question. So can you provide more information on details with the remodel?
What kind of details are you looking for?
Is it to add the drive-through? What's the remodel specific?
It's mostly an interior remodel. We will be adding an additional door for online order pickups. They call it a drive-up door, but it's mostly to bring material or goods out to the parking lot.
Okay, and so the outside storage area is just for construction materials?
That's right. This is all, yep, just temporary, yep. Target requires all of our material be stored within these 40 by 10 foot by 10 foot high containers. So we're going to get 20 of them for this project.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have no further questions, so, seems pretty standard stuff. Motion, please.
Guzekowski makes a motion, the Plan Commission approves a temporary use permit for the fenced-in staging area in the parking lot of 8989 South Howell Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that all dumpsters, storage containers, and office trailer shall be located within the approved fenced-in area. 3, there shall be no advertising or adjacent to the staging area. 4, that the fire hydrant shall remain readily accessible by the fire department with a minimum clearance of 10 feet around the appliance. And 5, that all shared drives serving adjacent properties shall remain unobstructed at all times. 6, that the maximum height of a fence shall not exceed 6 feet. 7, that all staging area and content shall be removed by November 30th, 2020.
Hold on, 20 seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Don. Oh, I'm sorry, Carrie?
Sorry, point of clarification, the date is November 30th, 2022.
Yes, thank you. I said 2020, didn't I? Sorry about that. Thank you.
Would have made me younger. What? The way it is, it's 2022. We do have a second, roll call, beginning with Don.
Hold on, aye.
Darren Bar, Anna, I. Bill, I.
Jinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye. Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Gets us to F, review a request, Matthew Flashberg, Target Corp. for an amendment to the existing plan unit development on the property at 8989 South Howell Ave. Carrie?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is kind of directly related to the construction project because what we're talking about here is an additional sign for that drive-up area that was just mentioned. There is a PUD that affects both the Target property and the outlots that are adjacent to it. The proposed amendment is specific just to Target. There were very specific requirements in the PUD as for what was allowed on the Target building when it was initially constructed, and then they asked for another amendment to allow one other sign on the east elevation. I think it was 2016 or 17, I don't recall. So this is asking for one more sign on the east elevation, no other changes. So what I've done is highlight in yellow the location, the proposed location of that additional sign. This also shows the other signs that are on the east elevation. So you have the CVS Pharmacy, you have the Target Bullseye, and then you can barely see it underneath the canopy, but there is an order pickup sign. The three signs are existing. This would be a fourth. And this is what's being proposed. However, I want to caution the Plan Commission that just allowing the PUD amendment to move forward does not mean that this sign is actually approved. It's just allowing the sign to move forward to the next step. So currently in the PUD, it's written that one primary logo sign not to exceed 200 square feet in area is allowed on the east elevation. One secondary pharmacy sign, which is existing, not to exceed 36 square feet in area. One primary logo sign not to exceed 144 square feet in area on the west elevation. And then if approved by the Plan Commission through the required sign appeal process, one additional secondary sign related to the principal business not to exceed 25 square feet may be allowed on the east elevation. So that was the order pickup sign that was last approved. No wall signage is permitted on the north elevation of the building facing a residential zoning district. All signs shall comply with the review requirements in accordance with code. So that's what's existing. What's being proposed is this additional drive-up sign, the fourth on the east elevation. So all told, the combined square footage on the east elevation will be approximately 334.5 square feet. So again, sign appeals or permits would be required if this amendment were to move forward. Staff is in support of this. And the conditions that are proposed are included now with your packets. Apologies for that. That includes the elevations showing the existing signage and the proposed signage. And it just says here under section 9B5. If approved by the Plan Commission through the required sign appeal process, one additional secondary sign related to the principal business not to exceed 78 square feet may be allowed on the east elevation. So that is for Plan Commission consideration for the PUD amendment to allow an additional sign through the sign appeal process. And there's a suggested motion for approval on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. We'll go right to council commission. Wrong night. Christine, you want to start?
Yeah, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Dawn?
Nothing for me.
Ashley?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Greg?
Is the applicant here?
The applicant is available by Zoom.
I just have a question for the applicant. I'm curious as to, is it redundant to order pickup and drive up, or are those two different things that they offer?
Hello.
Yep, we can barely hear you, Sojung.
Oh no. Okay, I'll try to speak louder. Order pickup and the drive up program are two different things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Chris? I'm sorry, Greg, are you done?
I'm done, thank you.
Chris? No questions, thank you. Don?
Quick question for Carrie. You did a lot of fast talking there. When do they come back for approval of the sign?
As with the previous amendment to the PUD to allow for an additional sign, they would come through the sign appeal process.
Okay, so that's another day.
That's another day.
Okay, no other questions. Thanks.
Okay, Chauncey?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, don't have questions, more of a comment. I mean, this really just shows an evolution of retail business. not only driven by the pandemic, but competition from online ordering. So I think this is a necessary step to help them stay competitive. We all love our online stuff, but there is a certain importance to having brick and mortar, particularly within our city, so I'm in favor of this.
Yes.
So, enough comment for me, so with that, motion?
Guzekowski makes a motion that the plan commission recommends to the common council to approve a plan unit development amendment for the property at 8989 South Howell Avenue after the following hearing, after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions.
Anna seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Chauncey.
Amber, aye. Anna, aye. Bill, aye. Shinsky, aye.
Mark, aye. David, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Hold aye.
Okay, item 7G, it is a review of a proposed amendment to the official map affecting the parcels at 2231 1933 West Putes Road, 8843 South 13th, 8950 South 20th, and part of the northeast and northwest quarter of section 19. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a nuanced proposal. It's regarding the officially mapped streets that are on these parcels and affect a couple of other parcels in the area. So there's going to be two options that are presented for Plan Commission consideration. The amendment to the public road extensions would mean that we would actually be removing some portions of the public road, but still providing access. The west connection that would be going through, normally be going through, predominantly the applicant's property to serve a couple of properties, or a few properties rather, on the west side, that has been proposed to be either eliminated in whole or eliminated in part with the retention of a 30-foot easement. And easements have been shown on the CSM that was previously reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission, is yet to be recorded. So this is the proposed future layout that the developer has presented. The CSM that was approved in March did show the future road connection, and it did show that 30-foot wide access easement that would be terminating in a certain point to the west. The blue, if you can barely see it, this is the blue, that would be the access point and the public road terminating in a cul-de-sac. The connection to serve the development south and through these two parcels would be private. So the official map would be removing everything in red, approving everything in blue. At the southern end would be an extension of the 20th Street access point, terminating in a cul-de-sac that would extend onto the developer's property, and that would be a gated access. That would be for emergency services only. To the west, the red outline but not filled in, that was what was proposed to remain unchanged. However, with the 30-foot access easement and the location of that to be a little bit different than what's shown here, staff is actually presenting another option, and that would be to remove the official map for everything in red. The connection points that are just lines would remain as is, because that's just dedicating anticipated future roadway that does not affect the property. And there's also a reservation that's south of this connection point, if you can see where my cursor is. That's already per another CSM that's separate and apart from this, so that's why there's no suggestion that we change that. So as part of the suggested motion, there is the option of which one we should, that Plan Commission would want to present for Common Council approval. If the Plan Commission wants to propose that the staff version move forward to the Common Council for consideration, that would also affect a few more properties. 2411, 2345, 2321, and 2301 West Putes Road would be affected by the removal of that official street pattern. 8810 and 8864 South 27th Street and 2320 West Grays Lane would also be affected. Those future streets would be eliminated. And that would affect those particular properties by just removing that from the official map. When considering a proposal to amend the official map, the commission should consider the impact on the ability to logically develop adjacent properties in accordance with the existing official map. Nearby property owners may have an interest in maintaining certain aspects of an official map if it provides them the future opportunity to subdivide their property in a cost-effective manner. If a person is proposing to remove this opportunity or to alter it, they need to demonstrate that any adverse effects on the property owners involved would be offset by the benefit to the neighborhood. In other words, a property owner should not be able to amend the official map to maximize the development potential of his or her property at the detriment of surrounding properties. With that in mind, there is a suggested motion, and again, the highlighted areas on the screen are those that are included in the staff proposal. If the Plan Commission does not wish to recommend the staff proposal, you would not include the highlighted addresses. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Sure there'll be some little bit of discussion on that. Chauncey, you want to start us out?
Sure, I do have a question. I don't know if it's for you, Carrie, or the applicant. So I'm just trying to better understand the impact of removing that second set of, well, let me say it differently. From removing the future streets that were identified per the applicant's drawing, just what the impact would be for those neighbors, those houses.
Right, so really in this particular layout, most of the official street pattern would be contained on the property that is owned by the developer. It crosses over this property here on the southeast corner. It crosses the east end of an already developed parcel on 27th Street. And then it slightly crosses over into a parcel that is accessed off of Grays Lane. Well, actually, it's not accessed off of Grays Lane. It's kind of like a remnant parcel behind a developed parcel on Grays Lane. This connection point through unplatted lands here, that could remain. This line that kind of extends down from there that almost looks like it's an error, that's actually half of a road reservation. The other half is already dedicated. That's per a different CSM. This cul-de-sac here just does not really make any sense for any kind of development purpose whatsoever. That's why staff is proposing this layout, because those road patterns just don't seem to serve a purpose in their current layout. That doesn't mean that future access in a different configuration to serve these properties in the future would be eliminated. We're just saying this pattern doesn't make any sense anymore.
Okay. And so based on that, I do have a question for the applicant.
Unfortunately, it looks like the applicant is not in attendance.
Okay. So, I guess, Carrie, was there any feedback from the applicant with the suggestion from planning?
I didn't receive anything from them. I did have a conversation about their PUD. I don't know that they had really any concerns or comments about what we were proposing as opposed to what they are saying. In fact, we had staff discussions prior to them submitting about whether or not the future streets should be eliminated in total or what have you. And again, this doesn't reflect the 30-foot easement to the west off of the public cul-de-sac that they've already accounted for in their certified survey map that will be recorded. So really, this would be something that if the neighbors who are directly affected by what staff is proposing would be concerned about, that would be something that, would be a valid question, obviously, and I haven't heard anything from the neighbors either, but again, this is a staff recommendation, so if there are any objections to that, staff is certainly willing to change our recommendation as well.
We have a couple residents that have been kind of waiting. Apologize. Normally I go to the residents first. It's been a long night, but if anybody'd like to come up, make a comment, podium, name and address.
Sean Kingston, 2480 West Grays Lane. So my property is the easement that connects on the Grays Lane. So that is part of my land. And one thing, since I've lived there for, 18 years, because my son's 18 now. So, it never made sense why Grays Lane would ever be connected to Putes. Because Grays Lane, if you guys have ever driven down it, is not a road that you want to encourage any additional traffic volume on. So I'm 100% supportive on anything that would eliminate potential connection sources to our road. It's just, we walk down, it's not sidewalked, it's a very narrow road, and we do walk our dogs down and stuff like that. So I'd highly encourage anything that takes away potential, traffic volume from that road.
And I'm sorry, which parcel is yours?
2480, so it's the easement property, so that line that doesn't complete to Grays Lane, that is our, half that easement is on our property and the other half is our neighbors.
Yeah, and I do think that really the access point, we almost presented a third option, which was to terminate the public road here. Well, not public road, but the official map here, because it would then provide that access to the unplatted lands. But since that line already provides that access and it's half and half, then it was relatively easy to make an interpretation that they would still have access to that unplatted land and wouldn't necessarily affect any of the other lands, because that's mostly owned by the developer. So just food for thought.
Okay, thank you, sir. Come on up, sir. Unfortunately drew the back end of the planning.
Well, that's okay. Sean Paul, 8864 South 27th Street, on that as well. My only question is the road proposed to come through my property, is that just for future if I should decide to sell it, or is this something that they're gonna take away, or what is that?
It's a future road pattern, so this is not anything that we're saying is going to be constructed. It's just, the official map is from like kind of the 60s, and it's been amended over the years, and it was kind of drawn without necessarily regard to how the future platting of the area would be. We have lots of future roads on the official map that don't necessarily correspond to how the actual development has occurred in the area. So this may be something from the 60s that made sense at some point whenever they were thinking that it could be developed with residential subdivisions. Okay. It's not necessarily really conducive to that anymore with how the remaining land around it was developed. So if we remove it, it just means there won't be a future public street there in this configuration.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No. Okay, Chauncey, I guess if you finished?
Yes,
Okay,
I'm done.
Don?
Thank you.
No questions.
Chris?
This is in my district. I've not received any phone calls about the most recent change or recommendation here. I would be in favor of staff's the red one that's on the screen right now. Thank you.
Greg?
If, with the staff recommendation, if those future roads are removed, if that area ever gets developed, does that indicate that it would be private roads off of the cul-de-sac off of Putes, or would I guess a development in that area ever come off of Grays Lane? How would that be accessed if it is developed?
Right, so the 30-foot easement is actually providing access to the west for a future private connection. But it's just an easement at this point, and it's only providing it to the property line, I believe, because most of the property to the west is still owned by the developer. It was divided up by CSM, but it's still owned by the developer. Any of the other properties that were affected by that future road pattern would then have to propose their own road pattern or their own driveway access for whatever development they would propose. It's just that this official street pattern for public streets is eliminated. It doesn't eliminate access. Again, with the way that it's laid out, it doesn't make any sense to provide access to those properties at all.
Okay. Okay, then I'd be in favor of the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Ashley?
Nothing from me.
Dawn?
Just a quick question. So I understand the red, what about the blue?
Blue is what's proposed to be future road or public road. So that would remain.
Okay, thank you.
Christine?
I'm at lost. I don't know what's happening here. So if you can walk me through it very slow, please, that would be great.
What's on the screen right now in red, ignore the blue for right now.
Okay.
Either filled or unfilled in red, that's the official street pattern. That would be the future public streets to serve the area. What the developer is proposing, the solid red would be removed. The blue would be the future public road connection terminating in a cul-de-sac, after which the private road connection to serve the development would extend. Also off of that cul-de-sac, and I'm talking about this one right here, is that 30-foot easement that's part of the CSM to provide access to the west in a private configuration. The rest of this that's in red but not filled in, road patterns remain. No change there is what they're recommending. And then this blue area, that's extending, it's already part of the official map, but what they're doing is just slightly changing the configuration to put the cul-de-sac and the extension of 20th Street on their property. That's still going to be public right of way, but it would be a gated access for emergency only. And also this blue cul-de-sac would be the public portion to remain. What staff is saying is anything over on this side and this cul-de-sac here, which is not filled in, we would just eliminate those as well, because they don't necessarily provide any real access to those properties. This is still developer property all in here. So these two properties here, actually it's really just this one, would have a nonsensical public street over the corner of their property that wouldn't really provide much in the way of developable access. Same for this property here, which is already developed and has access off 27th Street. This property here that has the kind of the cul-de-sac that's going over their property line would most likely be served by the existing access to Gray's Lane. I'm not sure if it's owned by the same people who have the house there, but I would bet it probably is. And then these unplatted lands, they may have access to 27th Street, or they could probably work out something within the 27th Street access management plan to get access over an existing. That's why we're proposing everything that's in red solid to be eliminated.
That makes sense.
I have a quick question. Why not remove it all? Why are we keeping that blue part?
Because that's providing access to the developer for the development.
Okay. Yeah. But it is our street.
It would be a public cul-de-sac.
And all that kind
Yep.
of, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
All the red will be removed, just the blue from both access to Gray's Lane, the bottom one and the cul-de-sac one.
Right, all the solid red would be eliminated, the blue would remain, and just the red lines would remain too, because that's just right of way.
So the one on the connecting to Gray's Lane, and you said this is going to be public right of way, however, it's going to be gated for emergency. Why is that?
There's a cul-de-sac there right now, they're just extending it onto the property to provide them that emergency access, that second point of emergency access for the development.
Okay. And the elimination of all of this access would not have any impact or any utilities or anything from that sort?
The utilities are already in and kind of follow the road pattern, but the easements for those utilities would just provide the access for what's there.
So the access elimination would not impact how those parcels are serviced?
Well, the utilities are only in to serve what's being proposed on the development, which is kind of, this was already proposed many years ago for development, so they put the utilities in and it just didn't happen.
Okay.
But to the west, that would be something completely different. There's nothing there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And just to be clear, we're deciding as a commission to include that second half that you had unfilled and then filled, which would be the highlighted section of the motion, correct?
If you're proposing what's on the screen right now, which is staff, you would include the highlight.
Yeah.
If you want to propose what the developer has, which is this, which is on the screen, do not include the highlighted.
Yeah, I'm in favor of including it all. Get rid of it all, include the highlighted part in the motion.
Okay, there's no other comment. I'll be very brief about this. I think Carrie said it very well. Wipe it clean, as staff is saying, and we're not denying access, so there could be something in the future, be up to them to redraw the roads, to where it goes. So, even off 27th Street, there's that hotel there, and if it ever got, together and somebody acquired it all, they could figure it out then, as long as there's access.
Right, and that western access for, that the easement is shown on the CSM to provide, future access off of that, public cul-de-sac, that could be a private road. There could be a private road configuration that serves all of these properties in the future, if they wanted to. It's just removing the public street component.
Right, because it currently does not make sense, as she explained before, so I would favor, our staff's always right, they get it, they're good. So. Okay, any other questions, comments? We're all clear? Sir, you wanna come on up?
I just wanted one more point of clarification.
Need your name.
Okay, sorry, Sean Kingston, 2480 West Grays Lane. The extension on 20th, how close will that be getting to Grays? Will that, because right now that's very close, so if that's extended, will that touch Grays, or is it still gonna be, are they still gonna be separated?
I think they're still gonna be separated. It's not necessarily that we're trying to connect Grays Lane to that 20th Street, so whether it gets close with the design, I can't tell you exactly, but the intention is not to connect, to provide additional access from Grays Lane to 20th Street and vice versa, if that's what the question is.
Thank you.
It will remain, again, I don't know why it is that way, it's kind of odd, in my opinion, but I'm sure you guys like it that way, so.
There was at some point of a plan to connect.
Yeah.
And connect all the way to Putes.
I would think for fire, DPW, things like that, they probably got some things to say, but it's gonna remain, so. Okay. I have no further comments. If commission doesn't, we'll go to motion.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the official plan map for a portion of the mapped unimproved future right-of-way affecting the properties at 2231 and 1933 West Putes Road, 8843 South 13th Street, and 8950 South 20th Street, 2411, 2345, 2321, and 2301 West Putes Road, and 8810 and 8864 South 27th Street, and 2320 West Grays Lane be amended as presented after a public hearing.
Buckle second. Roll call, beginning with Christine.
Anna, I. Bill, I.
Pipchinsky, aye.
Mark, aye. David, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Goldani, aye.
Chandler, I.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the wait, appreciate it. Item H, review site landscape, lighting and related plans submitted by Phil Purpuro, CW Purpuro, for a proposed parking lot on the properties at 7030 South 13th and 1190 West Rawson Avenue. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may recall that these properties were subject of a certified survey map from February that has yet to be recorded. The proposal is for a parking lot on the former residential property that will become part of the parcel that includes the existing building. The existing building is where the Purpuro offices are housed. As part of that certified survey map, there was a recommendation and a condition of approval that was also included in the council's approval regarding rezoning the property, and that's to eliminate the split zone configuration. That is forthcoming. They wanted to kind of separate that from this particular review. It doesn't affect any of the setback or other requirements for this review, but we do need to make sure that prior to any work being done on the property, that the certified survey map is recorded, and there is the reason for that is part of the conditions that are recommended for approval. That has to do with green and open space and stormwater requirements. Due to the fact that some of this property is currently asphalt and concrete, the open and green space requirements and the stormwater is really particular to what's being proposed versus what's existing. So going to the proposed site plan, everything that is in that hatched area is currently asphalt or concrete that is going to be eliminated and reseeded. And the parking lot is going to be on the west side of the building. There we go. So what's on the screen right now is actually the landscape plan. I don't think you can actually see where the proposed light poles are. I believe there are 2 or 3 that are proposed. Essentially, the parking it's being moved from one side to the other, and there are, kind of conversations that are happening with regard to what happens to the bulk land, but that's for another day. The minimum parking requirements for an office building in the zoning district, 1 for every 250 square feet plus 1 per employee. While we don't have any number of info on the number of employees that are going to be in the building, it's an existing building with an existing parking lot that is not completely used. So what they're proposing is really to serve their existing employees, and we trust that they wouldn't be proposing something that they can't actually, that wouldn't serve their needs. So based on square footage alone, they would only need 20, and this plan is in excess of 20 parking stalls, so we're good there. Light fixtures must be directed downward and shielded, especially on the side facing residential. Residential exists on the other side of South 13th Street, so we want to make sure that that shielding is on that side of the light. And there's a maximum of 3,500 kelvins that are required per code. While they didn't actually note that there are any new mechanicals, there's an existing mechanical that wouldn't necessarily be screened by landscaping due to the proposal for a walkway around the building to kind of get their workers from the parking lot now to the entrances for the building. But any new transformers or mechanical equipment that would be required to be screened. The landscaping plan also requires a couple of revisions. We're missing a few details with regard to installation versus maturity height, and those are the kind of things that we typically see need to be revised in landscape plans. There's also an existing dumpster and an existing dumpster location, but there's no plan for an enclosure. Now, per code, they are required to have either an enclosure or landscaping screening around that area. It's up to the Plan Commission whether or not you're going to require that as part of a condition of approval. I believe that we included it for consideration, but that is something that we did notice. I know it's an existing condition, but if we can get something to comply with code through the site plan review process, we would appreciate that. With that in mind, there is a suggested motion on the screen. It is in 2 parts. There are suggested 7 conditions for consideration. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before we go to the commission, the applicant want to say a few words or anything? Are you with us? Anybody? Evening. We'll need your name and address, sir.
Yeah, my name is David Bachhuber. I'm with M Squared Engineering. We're the engineering firm that developed the design for this. Our address is North 19, West 6719 Commerce Court in Cedarburg. We don't have any real questions or concerns. Carrie's been good to work with as we've been going through this process. So we're open to any questions that the commission has.
Great, thank you. Chauncey, you want to start us off?
No questions for me?
Don?
No questions here.
Chris?
No questions.
Greg?
I have no questions and I'm in agreement with the trash enclosure.
Ashley?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Don?
Nothing for me.
Christine?
Nothing here.
You're batting 1,000. I got nothing either, so. All right, motion.
Holdani moves that the Plan Commission approve site and related plans submitted by Phil Purpuro, CW Purpuro Inc. for the properties at 7030 South 13th Street and 1190 West Rawson Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that the certified survey map approved by the Common Council on February 14th, 22 is recorded prior to submission of permit applications. 3, that each of the proposed lots is rezoned into a single zoning district prior to the submission for application for development or redevelopment per resolution number 12306-021422. 4, that all light sources are shielded and directed downward, that the color temperature of the fixtures are limited to a maximum of 3,500 kelvins, and that light sources adjacent to single-family residential areas are shielded on the side of the fixture adjacent to the residential area. 5, that the plans are revised to include locations and screening for any new mechanical equipment, transformers, utilities, and trash enclosures, if applicable. 6, that the landscape plans are revised to incorporate details of the proposed plantings at installation and maturity. And 7, that all revised plans are submitted in a digital format for review and approved by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of permit applications.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call, beginning with Dawn.
Willow, aye.
Chinsky, aye.
Clark, aye. David, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Jan Blair, aye. Anna, aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Item I, review site, building, and related plans for Sidetrack LLC for an addition and covered patio on the property at 823 West Oakwood Road. Lori?
Thank you, Mayor. The applicant is proposing a 31-foot by 24-foot building addition, a 30 by 40-foot pavilion, which will be placed on a 50 by 50-foot concrete patio, and also an expansion of the existing parking lot. So on your screen here, we have the proposed site plan for all these different elements. The next screen will show the proposed building addition. This is going to be a single-story building addition, which calls for vinyl siding to match the existing building. However, vinyl siding is not an approved exterior building material for commercial structures per code. The Plan Commission has the authority to approve of such materials for additions with the 3/4 majority approval. This proposed addition with the proposed exterior material was previously approved by the Plan Commission in 2016, but was never constructed, so the applicant is bringing it back again. Staff has no objections to the use of the vinyl siding in this application. It goes with the rest of the building, so it just makes sense. The applicant has indicated that a mechanical unit will be roof mounted on the addition. The existing building would screen the unit from Oakwood, so there's no request for additional screening from staff. The proposed pavilion with a peak height of 19 feet by 7 inches, which is situated on the concrete patio. The height of the building per code exceeds the limit of 17 feet as measured from grade. The patio and pavilion were actually constructed in 2021 without local review or permits. This was one of my code enforcement cases, but the applicant has been very willing to work with us since we brought it to his attention. If the applicant would like to keep this pavilion as originally constructed, they would need to seek a variance through BOZA, Board of Zoning Appeals. The site plan, thank you, Carrie. The site plan indicates a gravel parking pad on the south side of the property, providing an additional 19 stalls. There are 23 parking stalls on the premise on asphalt. Per code, all off-street parking must be on concrete or asphalt, and if adjoining a residential zoning district, which in this case it does, adequate screening from casual view by earth berm, a solid wall fence, evergreen planting, or other means approved by Plan Commission would be necessary. Residential properties are located to the west and south, and an existing fence, which is set back 5 feet from the south property line, is shown, but there's no indication of additional screening from the residential areas on the site plan, so therefore we are asking for the applicant to address those issues. The site plan does not indicate any trash enclosures for the trash dumpsters that are typically kept in the back of the property. So per code, all dumpsters shall be fenced in or screened from view from adjacent residential areas. This is another condition of the approval that we're recommending for Plan Commission to consider. Speaking of motions, I have a suggested motion on the screen for you to consider. Is there any questions that I can help you with?
Okay, applicant, want to say a few words? Has to be you, you're the only one left.
Back. Round two.
Name.
Sean Paul, 823 West Oakwood. As she stated before, we did apply about 6 years ago for the actual addition, 24 by 31. It was approved. That's all, everything's the same on that. We did not construct a pavilion. There's no pavilion there. There's a tiki bar, but that is not the pavilion. That would be a new. That's pretty much it. We didn't, and I did propose to put a fence along the south property line, and that would, keep the, garbage cans from the view of the people on the south. But other than that, I think everything else is pretty accurate.
I apologize, Sean. Isn't it a chain link fence on the back though?
Yeah, there's a chain link fence, but I proposed to put a solid picket fence there.
Okay, we apologize. It wasn't included in the narrative, and so when we looked at the map, we saw the existing fence line, and we assumed that that's actually what you were talking about in your site plan and not actually a new fence. What was the height of the fence that you're looking to propose?
6 foot. And also on the pavilion, I did originally have a 19-foot, whatever it was, and I was told that you can only have 17 foot, so my latest proposal was to bring it down to 17 foot. I would prefer to have the 19 foot if it was possible, because of the existing tiki bar that I did build in there that has a shed roof on it. But if it can't be approved, I understand. It is a tall building already, so, excuse me, I do think it would blend in, and that would even be an issue.
So I just want to confirm, so we do not have a permit on file for the tiki bar too with the roof?
Correct, I was
That would
unaware.
also need to be included in the site plan and.
It was originally on the plan and it shows that it's existing. It was just a concrete structure I made out of block, and it wasn't enclosed, and it was under 10 by 15, which I think you normally need a permit in Oak Creek for a shed. It's not really considered a shed. I was unaware I needed to have that approved. That's my mistake.
Yeah, what you're referring to is actually for residential, but when it's a commercial establishment, then you would have to go.
That was my confusion, because it is a mixed-use property and there is residential there as well. Again, that's on me. I just didn't realize that.
Okay. So the fence would be included in the conditions.
Yes, it would be.
We would make clear, because I don't see it here. So, we'll go to the commission real quick. Christine?
I have no questions, thank you.
Dawn?
If you're proposing the fence, but we need an enclosed, receptacle.
Correct. We would actually need enclosure on that trash.
I can build that. That's no big deal.
And then, we're dealing with residentials behind you, but are those two residentials on both sides of you as well?
There is a residential to the west, and actually I'm in the process of buying the property to the east. And that is also a business mixed-use property.
Okay.
So there would not need to be any screening on those two sides?
On the west side, there's already a whole line of trees that have been there forever. I did propose to put another picket fence along the patio to help knock the sound down.
What kind of sound would there be?
Just people outside on the patio.
Okay, so no live music?
Well, we did have that last year, and we were told we couldn't have that. So that's kind of another issue to talk about in the future. There's other businesses real close that still have live music, so.
Sure, and as we discussed, just have to go through plan commission for that as a temporary use.
We've struggled with not just your area, but throughout the city with that issue.
I'm aware. Own that other property too. Don't run it though.
I have nothing.
Ashley?
Nothing from me.
Greg?
Is the pavilion, is there electric in the pavilion? Well, is it lit?
There's electric to the tiki bar just for TVs and stuff like that, but there's, other than lights in the pavilion, that's all that's really needed.
Speakers or anything at this time?
Not at this time, because I'm not sure what we can do with, any kind of music or anything.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Everything looked, good to me. I don't have any, problem with it.
Don?
No questions. Are we gonna have to add anything to this motion when we get there?
Yes, we'll have to. We have to go and add the section about adding a fence 6 feet tall.
Trash enclosure?
Trash.
The trash enclosure is already
Oh,
included
it
in
is in
there. Mhm.
Okay.
So it's say, number 9. I don't really want to help with the wording on that.
Sure. The fence, be installed along the rear property line, 6 feet tall.
Thank you.
Chelsea?
Yes, one question. I'm just trying to understand the difference with this. You said there's a tiki bar, and then we also talked about a pavilion. So are there gonna be both on site?
The tiki bar will actually be underneath the pavilion.
Okay, okay. And so the pavilion is the area that has to be at 17 feet tall or less.
Correct.
Correct,
And then,
okay.
and then Mr. Uphull would also have to go and submit building plans for the tiki bar and the electrical work, because that all, we were not including that into the staff report, not realizing it's there.
Okay, thank you.
Most of my stuff's been answered. So if he wanted to try to keep that remaining at 19.7 or whatever it's depicted at, he would go through BOZA for that?
That's correct.
Okay.
How about the music as well?
That's not part of this proposal.
Music would be a whole different thing coming through us on a temporary use.
It would be a temporary use permit.
Is it gonna come to us here though, or no?
If he so decides, right?
Correct, if Mr. Uphull decides
That's
to go
not part
forward
of the
with it.
motion right now, right?
No, it's not.
I'm not concerned about that right now.
Yeah, we'll get through this one first. Okay, I think you guys and ladies got it all covered, so can't see anything else.
Donnie moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Sean Utfall, Sidetracked LLC for the property at 823 West Oakwood Road with the following conditions. Number 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that landscape plans be submitted to the Department of Community Development for review and approval to show adequate screening of the proposed fence, parking, and patio areas. 3, all gravel areas must be paved to meet code requirements. 4, that all mechanical equipment shall be screened from view. 5, that the plans are revised to include details for a required trash enclosure. 6, that the use of vinyl siding for exterior building materials is approved by a 3/4 majority of the Plan Commission. 7, that the height of the pavilion should not exceed 17 feet as measured from grade. The applicant may submit a Board of Zoning Appeals application to seek a variance for the height of the pavilion within 30 days of this Plan Commission review. 8, that all detailed revised plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications. And 9, that a fence is to be installed on the rear of the property at a height of 6 feet tall.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call, beginning with Ashley.
Tuchinski, aye.
Clark, aye. Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Hold aye.
Chandler, aye. Anna, aye.
Willow, aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your patience, appreciate it. Before we get to adjournment, just a couple announcements. Spring is here. We're actually 1 month away from the farmer's market. Dawn, you want to plug it?
Yes, May 14, 4 weeks earlier. So pray for no snow.
There's no such thing as snow after opening day, ain't there, right? So, and again, it is holiday season. If you still celebrate, please enjoy. That's all I got. So, I want to thank you guys all. It was kind of a long meeting and took a little time, but thank you. Thank you to staff. Again, excellent job. You guys always come through for us. So with that, motion to adjourn.
Willow moves to adjourn at 8:05.
Anna seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Dawn.
Willow, aye.
Tuchinski, aye.
Clark, aye. Gavich, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Hold aye.
Chandler, aye. Anna, aye.